So, this is a topic I wanted to do for a while, but sorter will be on either tomorrow or Tuesday. So, for people who aren't in the know, the idea that we have come at the end of the DEI era is not. If you have paid attention to the news or that, you can say it happened under Trump's administration more publicly and officially. But a lot of companies have been phasing out their DEI programs over the last 2 years. Because I have basically over the last few, I'd say months is a thing. I bookmarked a lot of companies. You'd see a lot of companies like Amazon, Bank of America recently took out their DEI publicly. Uh,
The real start of the fall of DEI, in my opinion, from where it seems, was really the Budweiser Dylan Mulvaney thing.
you think it goes back? I think it goes back a little further though.
No, it might go back further, but that was the biggest thing in the first domino to fall, which really sort of set it off to where we are today, where it's kind of being completely eradicated.
Well, it's
But
when
publicly,
you. It's the problem is it's the culture war. Like I wouldn't say the cult. Like when the normies. I would say when the normies basically started waking up. Like we've seen stories where and you're coming to find out a lot of this was being uh pushed by the government itself over the last 10 years. A lot of people didn't realize it's been going on since before.
oh yeah, well yeah, companies always had. Because I used to work at Safeway, and this was early 2000s, and they used to have a lot of companies used to always have certain positions open up for minorities. It wasn't that it wasn't so much as it was today, where it was more positions are being held and preferred over cis white people, but they always try to have at least one or two roles for different races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they. So there's a story, right? Like Trump and them have been buying out the contracts. Well, technically, you can't fire, but they've been buying out the contracts of the people who have been there. Apparently, another judge won't block Doge. That's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
See, you'll get one judge that does one thing, and then you'll get another one. But it comes down to, I think this started from, what is it? The policy wasn't, it comes, I think a lot of this stuff goes back to initiatives that were started in the 90s. We were discussing prior to the start of the stream what we think. And go over a little background. So, 90s were pretty tolerant. So there was a lot of liberals in the 90s. Some became the more of that. Some of them wound up um, what we think are the progressives now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we call progressives. Uh, PC culture was started in, I think a lot of it I've had to explain because people don't think about it. PC culture started in the late 90s, early 2000s. PC culture is a politically correct culture.
Yeah, it was. It's hard to define exactly when, because the late 90s and the early 2000s, I know a lot of people as well who get mixed up with when something was actually late 90s and or early 2000s because it just kind of all blurred into one.
It kind of blurred, and then you had that era. There was like peace. You literally had like what was like a blissful time right up until the election of Obama. Then suddenly all of everything that we had with like racism, whatever they call bigotry at some point, all came out of the woodwork. You know what I mean? It
Well,
all just came out. It's like
people
90s,
took
magically
advantage
gay
of
people
everything.
never had, let me say this. Magically in the 90s, we solved the gay marriage issue to a degree. Relationships. You solved a lot of racism despite the early 90s. Apparently, whatever the hell happened broke it again. Round up the election of Obama, you had the reverse so I have to look the term up off the top of my head. It is Sunday morning. It was very early, but even though I'd been awake, there was a term when they wanted to do civil action. Like it was used, the same policy that was meant to get blacks into colleges, they couldn't reject them, was being used to kick out white people or other qualified non-ethnic people of the ones they chose out of schools.
Mm-hmm.
That same policy. So it was a reverse of that. And it was a 90s like Supreme Court decision that everyone uses. And you started seeing this because it came from, I think it went from PC culture to CRT to DEI.
Well, so it seems like almost at first it was they were trying to solve the problem and it was sort of working for the most part. But then it evolved into certain people taking advantage because you'd have the people saying it's when it started like you're not hiring me because I'm so and so. So you couldn't have that because of all the things saying, well, you can't be racist to them anymore. So you have if they started the shit like that, just give it to them. And they took
Yeah.
full advantage of it by every time that they didn't get their way. And at first it wasn't as like people's like, that's not even the fucking case. Just don't even pull that shit. But they just kept going with it and people kept allowing it to happen. That eventually it just blew up into what it is today. And it was the early 2000s when the term reverse racism came out.
Yeah, well, and there was a whole thing, and I've been trying to track down this article for a while. Now you know it didn't disappear, but it's like the other video with the Star Wars. It's for
Oh,
everyone. It just got buried. One of the people, because Tim Pool talked about this. I swear, if I bookmarked the article, I can still find it. But it goes back to an internet company around. You didn't start seeing a lot of what we call woke terms more public until a couple of people, and I wouldn't say it's the early days of the internet, but it was around 2012, 10 to 12. You started seeing the spike in the word usage of stuff.
mm-hmm.
And it was put into the algorithms because a lot of these theories I think came out of think tanks, and it also came from the changing culture of a lot of industries. So in '08 or no '09 is a prime example, you had a lot of career people in Hollywood after that strike take a break or they retired. So it opened up an entire door for a new generation to come in. With a new generation comes a new set of rules or new hirees. Now, usually companies maintained a similar culture or it shifted with the with that. But you also had something else happen, started to see as well. People started hiring like themselves.
Oh, yeah.
This means you're not hiring for the best skills. You're hiring because we work well together. Or we think alike. That's why when I would sometimes walk into like a Starbucks, all of them, they were like they basically, because you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
They bring in alike people.
Oh, yeah. It's bringing in friends and stuff, and they want to see, and people are, and they're told that you should have more people like yourself. So they bring in, and companies are told you need to hire these people, otherwise you're bad.
Because we used to call it, because in the case, there was one that it goes back that it's key. It was called, I can't think of the term, but long story short, it is affirmative action. I believe it is called, yes.
Affirmative, yeah, that was the original DEI, pretty much.
Yes.
Giving college spaces, giving certain jobs.
A set of policies aimed to address discrimination and promote diversity in employment. But it goes back because the affirmative action case it goes back to really the 1960s, but it got updated in the 90s, and it basically was set up. See, it wasn't up until, because there was a landmark case in 23 where affirmative action was being used to keep qualified students out of white qualified or Asian qualified students out of higher education.
Oh, yeah, because they were too smart to. Asians are the worst. Like they've got the highest scores, but they're not being allowed in because they have to make room for all.
There was a lot of people who were like, so affirmative action was reworked in the 90s. There was a case, and that's where I think a lot of this started happening. Because the whole discussion, if you get into it, about PC culture is you have to nudge people. If someone goes to you and then says, "Oh, are you racist?" right? They go, "Oh, you don't want to be racist, right? Tolerate this, tolerate that."
Yeah, and people just took advantage of it, as I said. You give them an inch, they take a mile.
And even now, because it's not insane what I'm saying, right? They're like, "You don't want to be called a racist, do you?" Oh, and then they just nudge these people along. Most conservatives aren't smart enough. The reason halfway it's hard for them to fight a culture war is because they never realized this trend. But the early progressive stuff didn't really kick in, right? Was it until they sped run the progressive era in the 2000s in 15 years. It collapsed in 10 years. Was it? They were only in power 10 years. Fully. They collapsed almost everything. They collapsed themselves. Because we talk about like Star Wars, you talk about entertainment. They could only remain a cultural force. But last century, they were arguably in control of U.S. politics and global politics for almost 30 years. Or they had a hand in it. Like from about Teddy Roosevelt all the way up at least until the mid-30s. Because it came from both. Because the idea is, I think a lot of it is, what people don't see this is progressive activism. It got in, but it's arguable to say that got sped run, but we're still going to be dealing with the after effects for a while. Because I'm more of afraid to see what the backlash to Gen Alpha is. Like Gen Z, I think is going to be a clusterfuck.
Well, it's going to take a little bit to see how things are turning, because we're just starting to go. They've pushed too far.
They pushed too far too quickly.
And not even just too far. It was too hard. It wasn't just. And as I was going back, as I was originally saying, the original downfall of all this, where it really sort of started kicking up the anti-DEI, because people were calling it out, because people were calling for what it was, racist, because
it's reverse racism.
Well, no, reverse racism is a stupid term, and I used to go by it, because racism is racism.
Well,
it's not hiring, and
liberals would not say that they are
racist.
They would not say they're racist.
No, you can't be racist against white people.
But they'll be the first, because Malcolm X himself said it. The worst thing to the danger to the black man was the white liberal.
Yep. But because they think they're so stupid that they can't get IDs. Like, a white liberal thinks so little of black people. I'm like, well, no, we're just trying to help. It's like they don't need the fucking help. You think so little. Like, you look at all their policies
of them,
that they have to hand them everything. But the first real downfall of the DEI sort of and this culture war was Dylan Mulvaney. Because when people are like,
and they saw Target? No, yeah. Dylan Mulvaney.
No, because once the whole Budweiser can thing came out, people started saying we weren't buying Budweiser. And it actually hurt them. It was such a visual impact that everyone was talking about.
No, there were people who would go to sports games and you'd go look, it was the Anheuser-Busch stuff, and they wouldn't go touch it.
Nope. And there were some people who just refused to drink Bud Light. They didn't realize all the beers that were owned by the company, but people were, and it started to hurt them. And people started going, shit. People are actually standing by their word. This isn't just people complaining about transgenders and stuff in media. This is people actually using their dollars to fight their point. And ever since then, it's been more things. A bunch of companies, Target got screwed over by that. And I think Target was actually probably the first one when they were doing like the kids wear and stuff. And that's when I think the started, because I think that came before the Budweiser stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was John Deere, I can't remember. There's been a bunch of companies that have come out.
Do you remember the whole Gillette thing?
Oh, God. But that one didn't hurt them as much. They did notice enough, but it wasn't enough for them to go, shit, we got to fix this. Budweiser and Target were the first that started going, fuck. Really? Gillette still.
No. Oh God, Gillette, the man, best the man can be.
Oh, that hurt them.
Oh God, that was.
It hurt, but it wasn't enough for them.
That hurt them.
But it wasn't enough for them to go, shit, we have to undo this. They just kind of let it disappear and just shut up. They went the quiet, soft route of going. It was these other.
Oh, you know, the funny part is that was the woman that they got to do that. She did a tampon ad.
No surprise there.
She did like a brought her in. It was a tampon ad with a bunch of flowers that looked like basically female body parts.
But the Target and the Budweiser were the first to go, shit, we can't just ignore this and let it go away. We have to fight against this. Even I think it was also Reebok or someone. It was a fitness. It was Reebok or Adidas.
Hold on.
And it was then that people started going, and after Budweiser especially, people started going, oh shit, we don't agree with them. We don't give them our money. They're going to fucking change and go back. They're going to change things. And that was the real sort of kickoff.
I don't think it was them.
No, but that was the big push.
There's a Reebok ad should sit on men's faces. Yeah, so there was an ad in 2019 to sit on men's faces instead of asking for their approval. I believe a lot of this goes back further. Like,
I'm not saying the fight against it didn't start till then, but it wasn't until that they started actually seeing actual consequences for their actions.
Nike's been the big one. They had.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Nike
was a really big.
Nike with what's his name? With the guy who kneeled. That was when Nike.
Kaepernick was always a dick, though.
No, he was always a dick, and he.
So 3 years ago, there was a feminist ad or whatever, and the one I think maybe about 3 years, like the Gillette commercial. Because there was a lot of ads too that was targeting toxic masculinity as well.
But people just kind of put up with it. Oh, it called Kaepernick was the one when Nike really sort of faced some. That was kind of like when people started calling it out more.
Yeah.
It didn't really affect much, but people started being more vocal about it after calling Kaepernick.
If you really want to get interesting, the calling Kaepernick thing is why a lot of people started doing they turned on the NFL like it was a plague.
Yep.
I don't know if you know that.
It kind of went both ways. The Colin Kaepernick was almost seemed like the big way was the start of people calling out DEI bullshit, but was also the harder push against DEI. Because that's when people started kneeling for the anthem and stuff.
You can say.
It was kind of like both.
But it was the thing that woke the normies up.
Or the people who didn't pay much attention to either side. And then that's when it really started getting divided by which side of this fight are you on? And that's also when people started saying if they were like, oh, you have to help the black community. Oh, BLM, blah, 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 blah.
No, if you arguably go through, there was a cultural nudge. But what really the problem is that they woke up the normies. Because even Arch just did a recent video, which is something I've said for a while. Well, see, okay, first off, the reason why you have the rise of what is like neoliberalism or all of that is due to the fact that I would arguably say comes from the concept of I don't think the right is going to win the cult. It took a lot for the right to be able to start to come back from the culture war and win it.
The
But
right, in all honesty, has more power. The problem is the left is the
but you're
left.
still well, Arch. I don't like Arch's whole opinion. It's basically the 2%. Even though those of us in Arch's and Sargon's community, we have been saying we say the "I told you so." We've just been trying to say yes, we see this coming, know how to fight it, but we're still like 10% of the community compared to like 90, the other 80, maybe 70, 80% max. That's, yeah, I saw that renown. I saw Ruby King stream last night too. They're over there gloating about that. It's good to see you, Renown. So the concept, so Manuel, tell me if I'm wrong, because a lot of this was a cultural nudge. But progressives thought they were bigger than they were. They pushed too hard. They did that. They had to do a subtle push. Are you familiar with Gramsci?
With who?
Gramsci.
No.
Alexander Gramsci.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Really? Yeah, I know. I know it gets worse. I've seen it. So Gramsci, um,
Yes, Renown. Fuck DEI.
yes.
I agree with that 100%.
So Antonio Gramsci did, and I'm sure Gay Beans really hates me now. By the way, so this is a man you can thank for a lot of that century's cultural pushing. So he had a theory where you cannot brute force culture. You need to nudge it along. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot, and there's a whole philosophy to this. You have to basically, you can't come in, be an entire brute force. You have to slowly change the culture over time. He has been cited by the left for over 50 or 60 years. They basically, you have to bring the culture with you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning you're getting why I'm said you have to nudge it along. In almost every movement has used him for years. That's a summary of it, but it goes a lot deeper. Because, yeah, the phrase himself, right, is you have to move God. Theo, stop fighting with people. I don't care about Taser, man. Dear Lord. So you get what I'm saying with Gramsci. It goes back. Communists use it. A lot of other groups, liberal thinking groups, used it. It's been used within cultural studies, political right, because you have to become the culture. You have to change the generation to embrace the culture.
Well, that's what universities have been doing for years. The
It's
universities,
a form. It goes beyond the form of indoctrination.
but it goes back to even the 60s, 70s, where universities have always been liberal conversion camps.
I wouldn't say that was until the 70s or 80s. I mean,
It wasn't as big of a push.
no, you're assuming, because the Soviets found the most devastating thing to America wasn't them themselves to subvert. Because if you go back, Yuri Blezhunov, who talked about it, he was in India in the 60s and 70s, and he saw the hippie movement. They would go over there, the flower power, the ones who basically burning their bras and doing that back then were the ones promoting a lot of the culture. Where they were shattered, but when he ran into them in the 80s, I'll deal with that in the day, Theo. I've been trying to get this stream out of the way for the longest time. But anyways, the concept is they found that these people and their kids were far more subversive than anything they could do. Because for them to like flip India, Yuri Blezhunov was part of the Russians sent to infiltrate India to flip it to communism, which they did. In the US, he found this is in the 80s. And I could find the video as part of it. And it's a video that still, thankfully, more people found it. Because you remember the Call of Duty Cold War trailer, Mando?
No, I never played the games.
So they have a part to where they use Yuri Blezhunov and Blezhunov. They don't realize they just rewoke a cultural thing. Basically, it showed how in cultural indoctrination works. You have to have that to move a culture. But he himself in interviews said the children of the hippies by far are more destructive. Come to forward into the 90s, because he said, yeah, like 10 years ago, you wouldn't have let gay people in charge. Because normally when the Soviets subverted a population, you had to flip the generation. You get them off their history. You get them onto gender studies, art studies. You get them separated from their culture. That's how you flip a culture, right? That sounds like how indoctrination.
And that's been the whole sort of motto and the views behind TikTok is what China was doing, is because if the TikTok algorithm pushed some of this stuff onto the children.
Yes, it's an easy feed. And there's been a lot of theories. It's been the war on the thing, because it's not like Vietnam largely could have been solved quicker. But the reason why that era was so disruptive was because culturally the U.S. started falling apart, especially after the Summer of Love in '68, where you started seeing that. Then all those people became teachers. Majority of them were extremist. Bill Ayers and all of them. Bill Ayers came on to inspire like Obama. Now, a lot of this culminates into the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, Obama comes from a lineage where his grandparents went to what is known as the Little Red Church up in Seattle. See, I followed Glenn Beck for years. Like Glenn Beck did the specials. This is a church that has communistic, socialistic ties. Their daughter, of course, hooked up with Obama's father, was a devout hippie. Now, Obama initially came out around in Chicago. Now, Bill O'Reilly has said only 5 women's names. He's twice and he's never repeated them. 5 heiresses promoted him. Chicago, when he was a senator, where Bill Ayers was for like 90s into early 2000s, was where there was a lot of progressive or social politics. You always had liberalism in New York and in LA, but a large portion of them were around Detroit, Chicago, the last areas in the U.S. that were still heavy unions. You following, Mandalore?
Yeah.
These were it was a very progressive area, that and outside of the Pacific Northwest. You know what I mean? Right up there. But that was a little bit different. Then the dam eventually broke. They started to come out through the rest. So flash forward to about 2012, 2013 era, you started seeing a lot of terminologies used that were only used in think tanks. It was like a Vice Media article way back when who said they didn't know that the use of that language, like you started seeing the rise in terms about 2013, 2014. And we could start to tell something was up with the culture. But no one ever thinks like conservatives are diehard progressives were like it always takes them about 70, 80 years to rebuild the power base. But as I said, they burn their stuff out in 10 years because they push too hard and too fast. You could arguably say they helped with Gamergate, but back then they had their hands in entertainment already. Wizards willingly folded a long time ago. Wizards has always been a liberal company.
Oh, but they got real bad recently.
No. Bear in mind, I play Magic. At one point, we always said about Wizards of the Coast in general, it was always the most left-wing company that had the most right-wing player base, conservative base or normal base. Because as gamers in the 90s coming up, we weren't raised to see race. Just don't be a dick. You know what I mean?
Well, we were taught to be race blind, which is now seen as racist in itself. But we were raised that you don't judge on anything; you judge them based on character. But that's apparently racist now.
Apparently, you can't do that now.
No, now you have to be nice to minorities, otherwise you're racist.
Well, yeah, you can't be.
You have to listen to them. You can't talk over them. You can't talk.
Yeah, well, they started, and we can all get. And if you ever want to see the cancer, that was like, apparently now autism is 1 in 36 kids.
Autism is now self-diagnosed. I don't go by those autism numbers because it's so pushed. And everyone apparently identifies as having autism.
I think some of it is self-diagnosed. But like you can go look in the whole neurodivergent idea.
Oh God, not even. Don't bring that up. That's
That
all.
is part of the whole thing with CRT and DEI too, because you get into it, they started changing terms. You need to change the language, but in reality, you saw a shifting culture. Women started having kids later, so if you didn't have a kid by a certain time, that kid was likely to have more issues. So rates of autism started spiking as the career women started having kids, as they felt their biological clocks started expiring. Even look at Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was warned that having a kid at 40, the kid could have Downs. They warned her of that and they offered to terminate the pregnancy. She said no, she was going to keep it. So there's been a leading theory: vaccines, having kids later, and the fact a form of autism has been around. Autism largely is not a mental disorder, it's a developmental disorder.
But it's also autism is one of those things that's hard to prove, and people are looking for those pity points or whatever they call it. Like
Well, the
world,
autism scale has always existed.
but it's never been something that can be like, especially low levels. Like I am low, like I am on the scale. Like it's hard to say where because there's no. If you're functioning, it's kind of impossible to tell for sure if you're not just awkward. But people are looking for those points. People identify as disabled now because they like to be special, because no one wants to be a straight, white, normal, healthy human. Because the world is, it's not just people are being, black children are raised to think that the world's against them when it's not. They are being a straight, white, perfectly healthy human. The world is against you. It's harder to get a job.
It's harder now because 90s, I think, so the idea, right, is there should be a massive cultural development in why Generation X, pre-millennials, at least first wave millennials, because middle millennials is really a fucked up generation. Late millennials are a mix. Because generation wise, millennials start about 94. I'm more Generation X. I was born at 85. So we are in that in between generation between what you call millennials and Gen Xers. But largely I was raised majority in my formative years in the 80s. So you have this concept like Musk is a Gen Xer in a way. That's why they have really weird thinking. Like I can understand Musk. Musk is that it's a weird like generation, very rebellious, very millennials. There's parts of millennials that we thought were bad, but it's Generation Alpha, which is a weird one. A lot of those you're seeing come of age now. Those were the ones who were more influenced by a lot of DEI and CRT stuff. Because it's always the generations. Because remember, it wasn't basic feminism that was bad. Third wave feminism is what fucked everything up. Amanda?
Yeah, no, I know. Was it third or was it second? Which was the
Third
one
wave is probably considered.
that
You
most?
started to see the problem in second wave feminism, but it was really third wave. Third wave is when you started the other. It's a cultural thing because you started seeing this. But it's not like it springs out of anywhere. All these movements have a start. It's as I said with Obama. Obama got his start out of Chicago. He was talking to Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers is a former member of the Weather Underground terrorists. He went into education. He didn't get charged or thrown into prison. He went into education. A lot of these people went into education. Now it takes 15 years to subvert a community. It takes a long time. Subversion, subvert, and revolutionize. This isn't the first thing. Soviets did not invent this. They just perfected it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know that, did you, Miss Sparkles? Subversion, it takes. Because that's what Yuri Blezhnev, and I fully recommend you ever see what he said in the 80s. In 85, everyone thinks that the Soviets subverted culturally, like, oh, we do this. He was one of the leading people who...
Oh, hey, Miss Sparkles.
Yes. He's one of the leading people that you find... See, he got brought to people's attention around when the Cold War trailer, but a lot of us knew about him. He, the fun part is, you can still find it, but this interview, like, he used to be around, and what's funny is he was a defector. He, in fact, defected. So, fun fact, I have the magazine that he was a part of. So, this is not the original.
Well, I've seen.
So people think,
his
right,
stuff.
this is the stuff Bill would not think. This was done in 80s. People think like the Soviets would subvert. The first thing he says, it's about the subverting of the generation.
He gave away the secrets.
See, he was a person who defected. 15 to 20 years is what he... This is key. Bear in mind, this is old. So religion, education, culture, law and order, security, internal politics, foreign, population, and labor.
That's how communism gets
This
in.
is exactly how they subverted a population. But he came to find out, like most Soviets did, the hippies in the 60s and 70s were... This is this old. This should scare the hell out of people, how accurate this is.
Oh, no. It's also, what was the 1984?
1984 is different, right?
But it's...
So if you subvert social relations, less individual response, rights versus obligation, religion, politicized.
No, he doesn't have the audio on, Miss Sparkles. It was just...
I'll have to download it and do it. I should download this before this disappears from the internet.
Well, as we saw with the Star Wars, yes.
This is this interview and a large majority of these interviews have been largely. So if he says you subvert, if you subvert security, demoralization, you have to go after intelligence, police, and military, results in defenselessness. Internal politics, you have to go into the party and antagonisms, and it goes into disunity.
Uh-huh.
This is something in tactics that we have been familiar with, at least in our side of the aisle, for a very long time. Media, this is where the big one is. Media, monopolize, manipulate, discredit non-issues, uninformed myopia is a result. This is where we are at with media. Isn't that scary, Mandela?
Yeah.
This is where we are. Culture, false heroes, role models, subvert them, addictive fads, mass. He used to go around until he disappeared. Finally died because he had to flee to Canada before he came to the US. And he basically disappeared in about the early 90s.
Well, he was giving away secrets.
And this was after the first major leaks. Democrats have used this style, and progressives have used these ideas for years. Education, right? So the idea is if you subvert education, you get ignorance. Yeah, this is a whole, like, people you could see, like, he would go around to universities. Like, the really big one you see now is in Life and Society. You break up the family structure.
Yep.
And it's no loyalty. Eventually. Health. You go into sports, Medicare, junk food, enfeebled masses. Race.
Fighting nowadays.
Race. You got to go into that. It ultimately leads into hatred and division. What should scare people is this playbook is old. He tried to warn the West, and this was largely followed by people right up until they started retiring from the government in the modern era of the late 90s to the early 2000s. Everyone in the Cold War knew about this. And you are shocked we have an entire generation that has been entirely subverted. Now, to be fair, you could arguably say that the U.S. itself, that it's one of those things, right? Urbanize leads to alienation. Like, this is a whole playbook where you can look at this, and this has been followed largely by Democrats to the point they subvert themselves, into the point radicals eat their own.
Well, they've been pushing. Well, and one thing that was also sort of started the sort of division in the family was also giving children the power.
You had to go after the nuclear family, but largely the nuclear family. I'll just link it to you, Miss Sparkles. I'm actually surprised that this is still up.
Oh, because they've been trying to hide all this stuff.
This has been trying to be hid. There was a whole thing. If you look up Yuri Blazmanov, you can't find half these interviews because a large majority of the interviews he gave.
Well, if you pay attention, a lot of Wikipedia is no longer, you can't really trust it 100% because.
So a lot of stuff is, he has his own, right? This is largely the others. Like, he gave interviews on this in 84. Like, this was this long ago. Like, when he came into US, like, he was hiding in Canada for a period. And he would go, there's like parts of it, they laughed at him, where he basically told people, like, he would do interviews and said, you let gay people in power and you let them just subvert your culture. 10 to 15 years ago, you wouldn't even care about them. You would have done whatever to them.
No,
what's going to happen is he kind of predicted. He said those people are actually going to do worse. This actually is the one thing. As I said, this set the stage for the 90s. Like, there's a lot of interviews with him. Like, he gave away the playbook.
Well, a lot of people called it out, going gay marriage was a slippery slope, and it was always seen as exaggerated. First, you allow people gays to marry, then you allow people to marry animals and children and whatnot. And it's all become fucking true. Like,
the scary part is, a lot of what he said, a lot of people knew. And the thing is, if he says, if you let the gay people, you let the subversion in. And what's funny is, this is a lot of the activists who later went on to go to DEI CRT. Remember, the founders of Black Lives Matter were trained Marxists.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you know how you can tell they're communists? Because they're demanding all the money and they get all the stuff, and then they're the ones who are the most corrupt and then spend it on other stuff. That's the same with all Marxist, communist, socialists. They want everyone else's money and then spend it for themselves. They talk about the greater good, but it never goes to the greater good. The greater good still suffers.
You ever wonder why we say Dev would be the first in our community? We call Dev the useful idiot. We said he would. Do you know the first people killed in a communist revolution?
The ones who fought, called it out.
The people who knew too much.
Yeah.
Then who are the next to go?
I can't remember the
order. Useful idiots.
Well, yeah, that's first they went for the so-and-so, but I wasn't one of those, so I didn't say anything, or I didn't say anything. Then they went for the so-and-so, and I wasn't one of those. And then they came for me, and there was no one left. And that's what all the commie bros and the Bernie bros. But they've been pushing them so hard that even Bernie bros and commie bros are going, fuck this shit.
Well, they're always as small. I mean, Dev himself kind of sees it, but we always have called Dev the useful idiot. Dev is one of the products. I think it's really been the children of the 90s, the far liberal ones who became more progressive, that started pushing DEI and CRT. I really do.
You could never do enough to help the minorities. And it's gotten to the point where they're literally babied, where people aren't able to read and write in high school, where math is racist because you have to hand them everything. Oh, they're doing bad at something. It's not the fault of them, it's the fault of the white person. And it kept going further and further because the more you help them, the more dependent they become.
Basically.
It started off with separating the black family household by...
They did that to themselves, largely.
Well, no, but they were promoted to not have a family household by women leaving the men because they got money for being single mothers.
Oh yeah, by the way, if you dare bring up the progressive history of how much of a not hero Margaret Sanger was.
Oh God, the whole point
Oof, a
was
Planned
to get,
Parenthood.
it
Go
was literally
dig
to
into
get rid of
that.
black people.
And minorities and undesirables.
But the biggest people at the time were black people. I can't. The quotes that she had that are about her have all been, well, liberals and Democrats and all these people that they worship. Like I can't remember who said they'll have black people eating out of the palm of their hands.
Yeah, it took and that's why as funny as Malcolm X basically himself said, as I said, that's why the famous quote is the most dangerous thing to the black man is the white liberal.
Well, and that's the whole Democratic, like that's why they keep offering to lower standards for black people and all these DEI programs and all these other things, is because they don't think black people can do it on their own. So what does that do to black people? There's some who go, I don't need this shit, stop talking down to us, and they become black conservatives. But then at the same time, there's a lot of people who go, oh, I don't have to try as hard. So they do this for a couple of years, and people go, oh, they're used to it. It's no longer whatnot. And then they go, oh, they're failing more because they're getting lazier. So let's go, we got to lower their standards even more because they're lowering their efforts more. And it just, and they pretty much want the government to be, the black people and minorities to be dependent on the government.
What was it? Because at least in the early 90s, right? We also did have the Rodney King things. No one ever said it was 100% good. Not by far. In US, we had the Watts riots or the LA riots. You had the beating of Rodney King, where, I mean, largely. But out of that, you had a cultural revolution. That's why a lot of marketing, you only, they basically, you can prove. Why do you think a lot of marketing now? I've had a conversation with my mother. She hates. Why do you think you see a lot of biracial people, families in marketing now? That's largely because that is the children of the 90s.
Oh, I found some quotes from Margaret Sanger. Eugenic sterilization is an urgent need. We must prevent multiplication of this bad stock. The most merciful thing that a family does to the one of its infant's members is to kill it. We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want that word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out the idea. Like, she just hated black people. Like, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. She is one of the famous leading progressive ideologues.
And that's why they're all.
She is quoted. All of this goes back a while. It's like,
well, and that's why they're usually in poor areas and more black heavily populated cities and areas. You still there?
Sorry, I have to take care of something.
Oh no, if internet connection
Sorry, Norval.
disappeared, I was just like, okay, I should be talking to keep things up.
You're good. Oh yeah, yeah. So you're talking a lot of people, and then you get to the era where we are now, where with DEI and we're dealing with the effects of CRT. It's like when I was dealing with One Gun, right? I was dealing with One Gun. I called him a '90s liberal, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like it. But at the same time, he didn't know what black liberation theology was. Do you know what that is, Mandalore?
No.
So, black liberation theology largely was revival of call it a very big precursor to a lot of issues. It gave rise to like the new Black Panther Party, etc., etc. You saw a large revolution of it with people in the 90s, like Dallas area. Like, it is a big movement that it goes back to a lot of stuff. And it got largely, I think, forgotten about at some point as a main idea. Because, see, One Gun's in his 50s. You could see it. But black liberation, yeah, no, One Gun's a different story. One Gun's an entirely. So black liberation theology is kind of talked about. You hear about it every so often. But it was like, basically think of it as the last gasp. It became a mantra for modern era. Who's the other person? Okay, Mandalore, you're gonna have to help me think of this. You may not know who she is.
Some racist bitch. Wait, what?
No. There's this one in particular.
That's kind of neat.
We call it black theology or black liberation theology. This was used to, in the modern era, to a further era of this was used to influence. Oh, so you started seeing, like, you started to see a lot of this happen. You started seeing this quoted in the 90s. Because we've educated ourselves during this period. When you learn prior, I think the internet, I swear, literally makes people dumb. Mandalore, you cover. I need to go address something really quick.
Huh?
You cover something. Because the person, the name I'm thinking of is a person. I've heard Arch mention her. She is a black professor who is largely quoted. Oh, God, it's a professor. It's going to come to me eventually because it's damn bad with names. She inspired DEI and a bunch of other programs. Arch is I know her face if I see it. Because Arch has mentioned her. Very famous one. Sargon's mentioned her.
And you said she helped start it?
She didn't start it, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But I have to go step away for like a second. But you fill in there. But it's a professor, literally, that has been talked about. She was responsible. I know the face if I see it.
Here, I shared a screen. See if you recognize anyone.
No, I'll look it up. Because there's one. She gets quoted a lot. But as I said, I have to step away a second. But there is actually a person.
DEI is all just commie bullshit. And reverse racism is a bullshit term for the main fact that it's not reverse. It's racism is racism. You can't reverse it. It's just going against someone because of their race. Oh, they're cute. They've been super sucky lately, clingy as all fuck. I haven't been feeling well, so they've been sleeping with me. But yeah, racism is racism. DEI is not reverse racism. It's reversed the kind of more focused form of racism, which was usually against black people because people were evil and horrible. And I don't think you should discriminate against anyone for their color of their skin, just for their actions and their views. Commies should be discriminated against because they're retarded. But going against white people is just going against white people is still racism. And the whole bullshit about you can't be racist against white people is complete and utter garbage and nonsense. You back?
Ish.
Well, I can go on ranting.
No, you're good. I'm trying to see it because I'm trying to think of it. It's a name. She is.
And yes, Sparkles. Most religions, all religions, and I've had this fight sort of more defending Jews, all religions have their dark histories and bad aspects and religious zealots, which are bad. It's not so much that they bring down the whole religion as how the religion as a whole responds to them, like they call them out. Muslims is one of the few religions that even their more progressives and more are still bad. I know I get hate from that, especially coming from a Jewish angle. It's like, well, it's just because you're Jewish, blah, 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 Jews are evil. It's like, no, there's been Jewish groups and Jewish people who've done horrible things. And I don't stand by them. The whole ADL is a garbage thing, and it was started for a garbage reason, for a horrible person. You just need to separate. It's how the majority responds to the evil shit. As I said last night in the stream with D-Lord and Malty is, I may be born and raised Canadian, but I'm an American at heart. And I really hope we become part of it. House. I say Z, I don't say Z. What are other some American? But the point is, I make as people who know me, I make a lot of racist comments and jokes in jest. I don't mean most of it. The only things that I will stand by for the most part are Muslims and very, very rarely Indians.
No, you just hate Australians. It's okay.
No, I don't hate all Australians.
Actually, I saw something funny on Yellow Flash's thing yesterday. Raging Rhinos in Australia, and he's like, "Yeah, why don't we trade? We'll we'll take your woke people from the United States and we'll give them to Australia since it's pretty bad down here. And then let's trade the conservative Australians who want to go up to to America. I'm like, hey, that sounds like a better idea. We get rid of your. We send the wokies to a communist hellhole. They can go.
The only problem
Good.
the only problem with, like, especially in England, is allowing the wokies to have it. You're just creating another Muslim country, because that's what's happening across all of Europe.
I wouldn't say that. That's a don't they have their own? Isn't that just running? I have to find this. It's gonna bother me.
Especially in like Britain and stuff. It is very much a real thing that they're being taken over. And the whole replacement theory is actually in action.
You know what? The problem now is if you don't ever look this up and bookmark this thing, but
you have to download it pretty much.
You literally have to either, because sometimes you don't particularly, but it's one particular professor, and if you knew her name.
Are you still trying to find her?
I will find it. But no, there was a professor, and she is quoted heavily in, like, when you ever see her or anything talk about what she does, like, it comes back to her. Like, for that particular, it's always one person that works at a think tank, but she was largely responsible. But move along, say the waiting. So the thing about, like, so a lot of this happened. A lot of this has been pushed so long. And it collapsed within 10 years. But it did take Star Wars with it. It took a large amount of stuff with it. It finished off Star Trek that was already on life support. But it was really weird. A lot of progressive culture was driving DEI programs. But largely what people need to not forget, the money had been drying up for a while. Okay. Mandel or anybody, do you remember why all the gaming journalists were being funded by the government? You remember, like, we've been hearing story about USAID programs?
Yeah. Why? Or I don't remember what. Wasn't it just so that they would hire more minorities?
No, Miss Sparkles, I'll remember it if I see the face. I'll find it. It's just like I found the video for...
Oh, we sort of found it.
We found it. But for that other one. But it's one of those things. Names, it's like if I didn't bookmark it. It's one of those, if it's a niche within niche knowledge. But, as I said, it's one particular. She actually... it's kind of like if you have to remember when Bill O'Reilly talked about the 5 women who initially backed Obama. Most of them you wouldn't even remember, because except one of them was the Hilton heiress, the mother of Paris Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
But he's never repeated it more than once. And it's usually a name that you're not going to hear much often unless you're in the circles, and for the most part, you're not going to remember it. But it's a name it'll be easy to find eventually, because it's quoted often by Sargon. But she's a college professor. She is linked. She did a book that basically became the blueprint for a lot of stuff the Democrats use.
You're not
It's
talking
kind
about
of
the one. You're not talking about the one who was fired for most of her stuff was stolen.
no, different one. She still works in the industry, or still works in colleges. But yeah. Then you also had a large number of people, like people either remember Ibram X. Kendi. Have you ever heard that name? No?
Sorry, what was that? I was reading a response from the missus.
Ibram X. Kendi?
That sounds familiar.
Ibram X. Kendi. Ibram X. Kendi. Yes. He wrote the famous book, The Racist Baby.
Oh, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah. He was found to be grifting in industry. Anti-Racist Baby, yes, was his. And he also wrote the book of how to be an anti-racist.
By giving everything to black people.
I wish I could make this up. And he's basically largely now discredited because it was found out he had he got largely discredited because he was found to be a fraud or defrauding the industry.
Oh, most of these people have been.
Just yes, they have.
Look at the creators of BLM movement. How many of them, as I was saying before, are pretty much communist leaders because they took in money for it to help the communities, and they bought homes for themselves.
Well, yeah. Also, the funny part is, did you know they were black lesbians?
Yep.
At least the majority of the founders. And they made more money out of the back of a dead black man's body.
Yep.
So the fun part about this is all tied in. So Obama approved a lot of money to go to, like, journalism, to expand it. They expanded journalism.
With journalism that they approved of.
And eventually it funneled down to gaming websites.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you started seeing, I think, after X amount of years, what was it? It's like why you're left with like IGN. Oh shit! Because I can probably find that really quick. What was it, like Media Matters shut down and all those websites? Those were largely kept afloat by government funds.
Well, if you look at how many news sources have been losing money and having to fire people after you said got shut down.
That's a bloodbath, by the way.
But right after they announced that they were cutting all media funding from USAID, I can't remember which newspaper sort of started laying off a whole lot of people. It's like, what a coincidence.
So the idea
what do you mean, True Darth? I'm always right.
Oh. So a lot of that is more or less like you start looking at like how DEI got in. Like in all these websites, because I want to like say a lot of the media websites that shut down, basically starting under the Obama administration and Doge. Doge was started. Fun fact about it: it started. It started underneath Obama. Like they a lot. It was a year, right? Shit. It was like the big, like, and I can't find it now. A lot of them, it was like a lot of websites that got shut down, and they were all kept afloat by basically government funding. Gaming journalists got kept alive by it. And it goes into what was DEI funding or CRT funding. And what's largely happening too with game studios as well. Like the studio that was doing the Wonder Woman game, and one of the
the one that was just canceled?
last ones.
Because there was one that was just canceled. Because the company was just shut down.
Monolith. That actually means what's funny about that is they were the last holder of the Nemesis system. And they still own the patent until 2036.
Yeah, but if a company goes under, usually that's purchasable.
Mm-hmm. And they were the holders because they... it was one of the last studios.
Well, and that's sort of like what's going on with all the stuff, as we were talking about before, with the Star Wars Old Republic. It's just because of the timing and whatnot, the companies are having issues.
So, like, I think it was like the year Media Matters shut down. Like, there was a death of how a lot of digital, like, websites closed or either bought out. It was like not Mary Sue, but it was one of the big ones. Yes, BuzzFeed.
Well, BuzzFeed also...
Fox.
BuzzFeed got hit really bad.
The other one, Spike. But Vice. It was the year Vice shut down.
But I was good. But the one that shut down was right after the bullshit P-tape gate. That there was the Trump peeing on a hooker in Russia or something. And it came out that that story was false, and that destroyed them.
So Vice, BuzzFeed, there was a bunch of sites that just were kept afloat by funding.
Oh, yeah. Because they push a certain narrative, so they were paid for.
What is everyone's familiar with everyone's favorite C word? Alyssa Mercante.
Oh, and how she's fucked up her lawsuits.
And she's been largely kept at Kotaku. Kotaku's like one of the last gaming websites left.
Wait, then there was the other one. Who was the one who was the original Frosk?
Oh, Frosk is different, though.
No, but Frosk sort of did a very similar thing and just destroyed the return. What was that channel that they were bringing?
G4 was always.
No, but they were...
but it was a year Vice and BuzzFeed shut down. But there was like 3 or 4 major media groups that shut down in 2024. And they've been kept afloat. Like, by funding from other, like either government or other backers. Because what's funny is a lot of money, if you haven't noticed, a lot of money that's been used to fund Democrats in the last 3 years, they had issues fundraising.
Oh, and if you look into their fundraising, you notice that there's a lot of
money is missing from their coffers.
Well, not even that.
A lot of money is not getting donated to them now.
Either. No, but the money that they did fund is very questionable because it was Act Blue, was it?
Act Blue,
Was
but
that the one
even
that they got?
prior, Act Blue had been doing a bunch of funds are weird. But when
Where
you
they
want to look
people were
into,
donating, but they weren't actually donating. Like it was. Yeah, I remember
uh,
there was a big Act Blue thing where a lot of the money that they were getting donated weren't actually being donated by the people that they were claiming were donating.
but see, even if you go back into the Democrats, even part of it is they were able to raise a lot of money, but their main millionaire and billionaire wealth pool that was funding them is not funding them anymore. Especially with USAID money that's not gone into a lot of companies. Like, take like in gaming industry as an example. The people who did Avowed, or let's take Dustborn. Dustborn was largely funded by Norwegian tax dollars. Um, take Sweet Baby Inc. At one point was being funded through. You know what's funny? You know how Sweet Baby Inc. has Gamergate ties?
No,
Do
I
you
know.
remember? Do you remember Zoe? To the average person, they don't know this, but you will learn this. They started using reinvested funds from the boyfriend of Zoe Quinn who Minecrafted himself.
Oh, well, yep. And Zoe Quinn is a royal. That whole thing. We
He
almost
had a game company in Canada. They started using for funds and reinvested it into diversity funds in Canada. And it came from Zoe Quinn's ex who Minecrafted himself.
yep. If we're talking about Gamergate and whatnot, we need to bring what's his name back on.
What?
The idiot from last time.
What do you mean, gay beans?
Yeah, Gabe Beans. If we're talking about that, because he loves Gamergate and Comicsgate.
I wouldn't say they're two separate things. He doesn't love Comicsgate.
No, but just the Gabe Beans from when I saw his profile, it just his obsession with calling out is just we need him here
Yeah,
so he can tell us
he's
we're
a
wrong and tell us
separate.
what we're saying.
I know. It's funny. I've had a channel bump growth in views since he's not here. I joked about that. No, but seriously, like this goes into sounds weird, but a lot of money was being funded from Soros funds. But did you notice in Europe as well, Mandalore? Conservative parties began to rise. Europe was the first to have a lot of conservatives come to power prior to the election of Trump. South America, you have the guy who single-handedly turned around one of the shithole countries down there. Europe started seeing a rise in conservatism, or right wing, basically, opposite of what we have left wing here. So it was no surprise Democrats and a lot of these movements were on the decline because, well, I mean, it's also part of Europe's reoccurring cycle since about the 50s. Europe always has this period where they collapse in on themselves about every 20 to 30 years. It's always this cycle. Eisenhower had to bail them out at some point, late 50s, early 60s. But we do it about, last time we did it was about the 80s, so to speak. We had to bail them out. But it's always because their social policy always winds up folding in on itself. But they always go through this where the social policy dictates. Because it's like I talked to a friend in Germany, right? You remember all those lovely Muslim migrant people who came over there? That everyone said to take, that they're harmless?
Oh, yeah.
When they got to Germany every other weekend, one of them, one of them was yelling Allah Akbar
It's still going on.
and knifing people on trains. But the German but the German media goes, a man just rammed a food market for no reason. Oh. The machete made him do it. Okay.
Well, they're still having issues with it.
Oh yeah, UK does this as well. You remember how like that video we were covering on Maltese? She won't use the language.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Just use the language, and you're good. But all these people, this era, like even look at Disney. Bank of America is closing out. Companies are closing out their DEI divisions. Amazon, Disney, most of Hollywood. They're either stopping it or they're cutting it back.
Or they're not the problem is they're still doing it, but they're not being as public about it. They're
trying. Oh yeah, Target was one. Was it Victoria's Secret? Tweaking theirs recently. Lowe's. Basically, you're seeing like 19 within at least 20. It's almost every other day I've ever seen it. I had these stories bookmarked for a while. I was like, it started last year. Disney's just announced publicly. Federal government's now announcing they're cutting it back. They finally admitted it was there.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the thing about the companies and the corporate culture. It came from the HR departments. But then in gaming development, it came from the art departments or the people developing teams. But it wasn't until the next wave of developers came in. Because you can just find like stories and they hit the media either Monday or they hit on Fridays. They announced them. They've been scaling back DEI programs or rebranding them. It's gotten so bad, it's now hitting the colleges.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting. The most interesting backlash. Like, and this is not just a thing that a conspiracy theory. This has been happening. The Bank of America did it recently. Like you could bookmark. I had these stories bookmarked. Amazon did it publicly. They had to announce it because of investors.
Even though most of the things aren't changing, it's just the public, them promoting it publicly, going, we're a big supporter of this. You want to hear something quite funny? Knowing who I am now, when I was younger, I actually considered going into HR.
I feel like, I feel who would make a really good HR agent. Stray Beans.
Why?
He is definitely not the Karen who says, bring me. He'd be the great person you bring into HR to beat someone over the head. But it started with a lot of tech companies. And then all these companies started before the election. So when did you start noticing? Because see, this is from what? 115? Big tech companies are cutting their DEI programs. And these are a lot of people. Do you remember all the gaming layoffs last year and this year?
Yeah.
This is all HR or DEI hires. Meta was one. Amazon was one. You can go back. A lot of these were doing it. Victoria's Secret was recent. I mean, BlackRock even had to announce it. Disney came out. Pepsi, JP Morgan Chase. Disney. Here's a big one. Disney. But they also have a class action lawsuit against them. Still leading over that. PBS. But PBS has still largely done it. CNBC. Okay. MSNBC's been cut off from NBC.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is a big change.
Oh, and what's her name? And there's the one reporter who might be out of a job soon because of her comments.
Joy Reid got thrown out.
Yes.
Target was one of the big ones. January 17th was FBI. They had to get it out of the government. McDonald's, Walmart. Oh, yeah, I remember when Walmart did this. All the leftists said don't shop at Walmart.
Oh, as I was saying before, the right has more power because they're the more financially stable and they can make the most
Lowe's, Ford.
But the left is louder. But they notice a big difference.
Vocal minority, yes. Majority. They are a vocal minority.
And they're the most threatening because they
John Deere. I remember John Deere doing this last year. John Deere was a really big one last year.
John Deere and Harley.
Harley, yes, was in.
They both went DEI, and right off the bat, and then right away they went back on it because they realized, shit.
To be fair, John Deere is also still largely at, like.
Oh, but they've actually still been hurting since then.
What hurt
Not
really?
Quite the same.
I'll be honest. Anheuser-Busch in that. Conservative people actually pulled their money back from Target. And there. They lost money.
Oh, yeah.
So did Anheuser-Busch.
As I said.
Target felt it.
Target and
Anheuser-Busch
were the ones who felt it the hardest. As I said, those were the first big ones to really go, shit, we can't.
Core sales went down that bad. Or Bud Light, the ones.
Yep.
They felt it so bad it hurt their quarter.
Well, because at first people were just avoiding Bud Light, but then people's like, oh, you're switching from Bud Light to so-and-so, but they're all owned by the same company.
I remember looking at this. They lost so much money. It was recorded in their financial quarter. We find a good article for that. That is how much the Dylan Mulvaney thing.
You know what's funny about the Dylan Mulvaney
them?
Oh, I know.
They lost $395 million in sales.
Oh, I know. But as I said earlier, they were the first ones to really see the financial hit. And that is when the big change started happening, is because conservatives were always the vocal minority, but they're the most financially stable who can, business-wise, affect the company. And they finally went, fuck you, to Budweiser. We're like, we're not buying you. We're not even just not promoting you. We're not buying you. Because if you remember, There were stores that were trying to give it away that couldn't even give it away at one point because no one wanted it.
They lost 395 million in the second quarter. The layoffs, a lot of the companies, when I was doing stuff with Gray, the layoffs, and it wasn't just 2024 was a bloodbath. Just Q1 of last year for companies was a bloodbath.
Well, and if you remember, shortly after all this happened, the person in charge of marketing for a little bit was standing behind the whole DEI and all this woke crap and kept promoting and saying blah, blah, blah. And it was like, oh, she got fired. Oh, imagine my shock.
Oh, yeah. The head of Anheuser-Busch, yes.
There were a few top people who were fired for it in the end because...
Let's see. I remember this. She got fired. She got fired, yes. Yep, she stepped down. Yes.
No, she didn't step down.
She got fired. Yes.
You're either stepping down.
This was her. Yep. Yes. She got, yep. That's how bad it hurt them.
That the fact that they still gave her a chance, I think it's built into all their contracts pretty much that you can step down for...
I go back, it's like the Gillette. No one remembers, like I was telling you about the Gillette one.
Well, because the problem was Gillette didn't face as much financial scrutiny. They got a very... They had some loss in sales, but nowhere near
it hurt their brand.
It hurt their brand, yes. But the problem with razors and stuff is there's not too many. Like if you want to go to like the disposable ones and whatnot, there's not too many quality brands that do like.
Okay,
I really hate Gillette.
Right. Everyone is familiar. I'll bring up the two ads. Right, everyone knows the original slogan for Gillette: "The best a man can get." I can't play it because I might be copyrighted. I'll show it. Okay. She did the best the man can be. Even it was done. This hurt them. This was one of the big ones. Where it's been 5 years, in fact. I have to see if I can find the original.
It hurt their brand, but the problem with razors is it's not as big of a market as beer.
I want to find the original.
Oh, I'm not saying not to, but razors isn't as big of a competitive. Gillette.
Okay, here it was. This is the one. The best the man could be. Like, it was so speared, it hurt, like, their entire brand. This was 5 years ago.
But not their...
God, I still know people who don't even look at it. So here
you know when you share a thing, you can click share audio with it. I don't know why you never share audio with your videos.
I can't do it with the other.
Why?
It works with Chrome. It doesn't work with here. Also, copyright reasons.
Well, yeah.
So this was the thing about the talk. So this was the ad that was produced by a woman, and she got fired too.
Yeah.
Who just happened to do a tampon commercials prior to this. See the Me Too movement, right?
Yeah. This was at the bigger point in when
this literally cost him money.
But nowhere near the same amount.
Terry Crews.
But that's for the Terry Crews was for something else. They kind of
God, what was that? I have to go back.
He was sexually assaulted by
the cat calling on the street thing.
And if you notice, it was all white kids being horrible, but black kids were the good ones for the most part.
And when someone dug into the woman who did this commercial, was this actually hurt them.
Do you know who I thought did this ad? And I don't know if it's the same woman. Do you remember that pink tax commercial where women were assaulting men? I can
find the exact commercial she did.
No, but you know what commercial I'm talking about? Where the woman kicks a coffee cup into the man's face or something, and it's just women attacking men.
So what happened eventually, right? They quickly went back to the best a man can get. They actually went back to it. They did. It was the Gillette marketing. That was actually shit. Now that makes you feel old. She actually lost. It was originally done by a woman, and one of her prior credentials was a tampon ad showing women's body parts as flowers. And it was instantly like, it led to the Gillette boycott. It hurt them in that same quarter too. It was a horrible.
No, but the real big and Gillette
Target was one. Bud Light
Target was one. Oh, there were many, but the real big one where Target was almost the first one with the financial loss where it was noticeable, and it was like, oh shit, we have to undo this. Gillette there was financial with Gillette, but it wasn't the same amount that was lost that they went, fuck, we can't do this. It was,
you started to see like Dollar Shave Club stuff happened.
Well, Dollar Shave Club was around. They just used that to promote for a bit, and people were promoting.
To be fair, a razor is a razor for the most part, except for cheap disposable razors. But
like Vic and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying, that razors is not a huge market. Like, there's not many options, like, especially compared to Gillette.
Yeah.
There's not many options for people to go, I don't like them, I'm not going to use them anymore. Like,
no.
It's not even like you just go because of your preferred brand. It's also, they are different. Like the fusions and whatnot are Gillette does the best.
Gillette was one of the biggest brands,
and they are really one of the best brands. So you can't really leave them and go to someone who will make you as happy or something that does as good of a shave.
Now, the other part you're seeing,
but with Target and shopping stores, and even with Budweiser or Bud Light, there are many options too. They have many equal bigger competition that you can go to, and they were the ones who noticed the financial more so that they went, shit, we got to undo this.
So you want to I'm surprised. I need to probably pick your brain one day on Sister.
Sister?
The transgender clone trooper.
Oh, God.
Oh,
No, but here's
God.
the thing. That is
God.
bullshit. That is a bullshit thing created. It's not canon. They were all identical. There was no sister, and you want to know something?
Except for Bad Batch.
I was just about to say, there was actually a sister. And it was Omega.
What was it? Bad Batch addressed this. A botched clone.
Well, even the Clone Wars with Clone 99, which led to the Bad Batch 99.
What was the one that...
Task Force 99.
Yeah, what was the one in Bad Batch that was like a they, them?
There never really was, but there was a couple sisters. And they all looked similar. They weren't just
and you can look at game companies, right? Whether it's Blizzard versus Blizzard. Like, Bloodlines 2 is cooked. Like, we knew Bloodlines 2 was cooked. Okay, here's the funny part about it. That game is getting released and getting no DLC.
Because they're not investing any more money into it.
No. Paradox literally admitted to game was too controversial and they're on their fourth rewrite. And then they said
they're done.
They're going to drop the game. They'll keep it serviceable.
As long as it's making money. Once no one's paying.
No, but it's not getting any DLC. It got the Veilguard treatment.
What was the game recently where people were wanting another game and it finally came out and it's got the giant sort of lesbians in it doing push-ups?
You're not talking about Avowed. Which game was it?
No, it was one that came out last year, I think.
I kind of block out a lot of bad games unless they
flop.
Well,
I don't play many games. Like, it's more of a I just hear about these because of how they are.
There's been a lot of bad games in the last year.
Well, the last couple of years, in all honesty.
Like Avowed, like Veilguard.
Oh,
Saints Row.
No, Saints Row Okay, I found the character. I just gotta find the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
What game is this? Here, I'm going to post a link to the picture in the private chat. You'd probably recognize it.
That's Veilguard.
Yes, that was what I was talking about.
Veilguard, yes, which was Dragon Age Inquisition 2. That had a really horrible art.
Well, it's just all the woke bullshit they pushed. And then there was that game that was so bad. There was those couple games.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to steal content from Arch, but literally the idea, like, they've already said Bloodlines 2 was cooked.
No, but what
was the game prior?
What was the game that was like another one of those sandbox sort of shooter ones that didn't even make it at release because it was so horribly, the visuals were so bad and it was so horribly done that they just canceled the game altogether?
Again, which one? I mean, there's been a lot been canceled in its embryonic state.
No, not even
Concord. You're not talking Concord, right?
It might have been.
Concord was so bad it just shuddered. CD Projekt Red is probably likely cooked as well.
Yeah, there was a couple games, especially last year, that were shut down before they even
Concord
released.
made it 8 days after 8 years and in development.
Yes. Oh, but there was another one like Concord around the same time, I think, that didn't even make it. It was close to release, and they just said nope because everyone said it looked like crap. But they've had a bunch of those games lately.
Let me look that up. You said games canceled in 2025 or 24?
Yeah. Are you looking up how many were?
There was a lot.
Well, and wasn't also what's this called? Any updates sort of not happening for Death of the Suicide Squad? Or
Suicide Squad is one of those ones.
Suicide Squad kills the Justice League or something was what?
Well, the thing is, they paid for that game for a year. They said they were going to give it 4, and then they're going to let it go in. Multiverses was canceled too.
Because the game looks like such crap. And like that, isn't that technically supposed to be like a sequel to the Arkham series?
Not really.
Like it wasn't an exact story continue, but it was slightly. And like that was one of the last roles what's his name did for the Batman character, and it was a horrible insult to him.
So Duke Nukem was canceled last year.
Wait, there was another Duke Nukem coming out?
Well, they're supposed to be.
Well, don't forget the original Duke Nukem 3D. The new
Duke
one.
Nukem, there was like another they were been working on.
Okay, because the last Duke Nukem game was...
Because live service games get canceled pretty easily.
But no, how long was the last Duke Nukem in development for? After 3D?
I'll have to look that up I'll look that up because there's been games that have been in development hell in like...
Oh, the last Duke Nukem Forever was in development for 14 years and 44 days.
Yeah,
there was rumors of it for years and people were waiting on it, and it sort of just died out, but eventually it did come out and it was garbage.
That's why do you think no one has hopes for GTA 6?
Oh, because they've promoted bullshit.
We still have, I'll be honest, we still have 2 or 3 years of games from DEI era. We still have it.
Well, yes.
We still are going to be dealing with a couple of Gamergate games till 2 more years.
Well, as far as I know, there'll be no more updates on Outlaws, as far as I know.
Well, that's Ubisoft's problem.
Well, didn't the company that made Outlaws go under?
No. So I've been meeting, and I'll have to do the more evidence because I'm waiting to see how Shadows affects Ubisoft. Ubisoft is being kept afloat by doubling down upon its classics. So if you told someone they fucked up a pirate game, they fucked up an Avatar game, and they fucked up a Star Wars game in the same year, X-Defiant got shut down within the same year, which was made from Division 2 assets. Basically, they were going to part out Division 2. I think it was like Q1 of last year because we were going to go into year 6. So start of year 5. They said they were going to have to go back and reinvest in the money, the company that's making them money, the games, like Division 2, Siege. But they fucked up like 3 to 4 games. They would have had a 4th in that same year being Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Oh, the
Assassin's Creed Shadows has been pushed off to this year. They were so close to, in theory, bankruptcy. They haven't had a major release of a title in like 3 to 4 years.
Well, has the latest Assassin's Creed game been released yet, or does it still keep getting pushed back?
20th of this month.
Oh.
So what they did is they pushed it back. They re-cleaned up the game, cleaned up the marketing to try to hide the marketing, but it's still going to sell a lot. But I don't know if it's going to have staying power, quite honestly. Because here's the problem with Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is kept alive by an army of simps. It's not a dedicated fan base. It's like I may like Diablo 4, but Diablo 4 is kept alive by dad gamers and people who don't mind it. It's largely a programmer's game or people who work from home. And I might cut back next season because I have a rant when I find out if they actually what they're going to do with Diablo 4, because one of my friends told me what they want to do next season. And that is a game rant.
Well, the problem with the Assassin's Creed game isn't even that. It's the fact that, one, the marketing's already been out, so people who would
oh no, the art book has been confirmed. The art book with the broken Tory gate.
No, I'm not even saying that, but the
and all of that people have seen the art book. That's all in the collector's art book.
No, but my point is all the info about how woke it is and all the Black Samurai stuff is already out there. People know. And a lot of Asian fans are not going to be buying it. And a lot of people...
No. That actually led to Ubisoft. Japanese are very slow to respond to progressive or the DEI programs.
No,
they still adopted them to a degree. You see it in Square Enix a little bit. Square Enix in that Capcom is trying to avoid it. They were able to avoid it to a degree.
But
because bear in mind, Japan's about 5 to 10 years off from the West. They're a little quicker now.
Oh, they are, but they've already had complaints about the game with someone's company being used in the game. Banners. They use one without.
They use okay. So here's the thing with Assassin's Creed Shadows, and this is going to lead into it. A lot of these people, it's developed largely by Massive, or not Massive. Massive has its own issues. They are the ones who did the Star Wars game. They tried to fix that game. The dev team was told. Their stories from the dev team is because it was largely very micromanaged by... So the reason why it seems soulless, it has a very good world. Ubisoft, if they do anything well, build worlds really good. But they couldn't save her character looks because they were afraid Disney was going to come down on them.
Oh, an Outlaws character? The Outlaws character?
Yeah, during Outlaws development. Now, we all knew the Avatar game was going to be a shit show. We all knew Skull and Bones was going to be a shit show. No games in development hell for 8 years and comes out good.
No, and that's one reason I've been fearing what's it called? Knights of the Old Republic.
Like, just to give you an idea, GTA 6 has been in development since at least 2015.
Yes, but the problem also there is GTA 5 has been such a good game and has been milked, and it's people are still doing it. They're still creating mini games and mini maps and stuff in it.
So the idea of it is with Assassin's Creed Shadows, the theory, and this is something I'm waiting to see what happens with Ubisoft, is not that people like Chinese games. Why is Marvel's Rivals Pop good, you think?
One, Marvel's is popular, and two, big butts.
It's a hero shooter that scratches all of the itches that need to be scratched. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It scratches all the itches people want. A Marvel game. A hero shooter. And all that, right?
It's also great for cosplaying because people have been.
And also the female characters look like female characters.
Well, and like with Marvel, most of the time, and more classically, make their females attractive compared to more modern, like the canceled, the new whatever comic that was canceled with the gay twins and the HIV guy and the fat chick. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Which one?
The horrible comic that was never made. The new Young Event.
The New Defenders?
Yes, the one with the incestual twins. AIDS.
I know the one you're talking about. I got blow my noses.
Yeah, never got finally made. Was it New Warriors? Yes, it was New Warriors. That had the fat. It was the woke in a game. That was
it's the New Warriors that never wound up coming out. See, the thing is, why when you look at DEI in a lot of games, it's what people who are progressive think are games. You in the Shingaku period, right? You have many legendary samurais. The original protagonist of the game was supposed to be a Japanese monk. I shit you not, because we have followed the development. It was called Assassin's Creed Red. Now, the idea is there's a lot of stuff, and this can go back with the issues in Assassin's Creed, can go back to probably like Syndicate. Starting with Syndicate and Kim Belair was working there. Her thoughts, and then you can go look at Valhalla. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. You can see it's been in their development for a while. But they've made slop games. Hell, they're already... But then again, the reason why Baldur's Gate... Not Baldur's Gate, but... I'll have to touch on why Baldur's Gate seems popular, but people don't understand. It got into there too, but most of the game's unaffected. But the reason why you have certain games, like they chose Yasuke and all their experts are wrong. Every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're either communist, leftist, right? They literally, but Japan has so many issues. Basically. I mean, but they have full out communist over there. But Assassin's Creed Shadows has been reworked to a degree. Yasuke is still a playable character. It's still going to sell because it's an Assassin's Creed character game. But how long will it stick around? Basically. Baldur's Gate 3 was largely a success, even though it has the freedom of choice. It's like me playing through Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I haven't done it on stream, but I've been slowly working through all the side quests because that's what I do before I get to the main quests, which I feel like I'll be there forever. I'm not even to the wedding. I should be at the wedding already.
We'll need to wrap up in a little bit.
You will.
But yeah, I got my wife wants to go shopping and it's Sunday.
So the thing about a lot of the era is you're seeing a lot of games collapse, right? Like Amazon has had theirs. You have a lot of their media has collapsed. Like you see it in Star Wars even. Star Wars, who are they making it for?
They don't know anymore. They're trying to make it for the Marvel fans, or the Star Wars fans of old, but they're still insulting them by saying you're wrong for your views and how you grew up enjoying Star Wars, so you have to enjoy this new way.
Well, and see, this is the big thing. Chinese industry, right, is actually the Chinese slot games are actually better representations of games. You know why all MiHoYo games are largely popular? Because they may not be the best. They're not as bad. Some are done out of MiHoYo. Other people like Genshin's largely done out of China. No, they have a Japanese teams, Chinese, Singapore teams.
Oh, and I looked it up just from before of the New Warriors.
Yeah, that was canceled.
No, I know. Included screen time, a meme-obsessed teenager connected to the internet. Snowflake, a non-binary teenager with ice powers.
Yep. Safe space
twin brother who can create force fields. And there was also some twin cest going on between them when the things talked about them further. B negative, a living vampire who received a blood transfusion from Morbius. And Trailblazer, who was a fat black chick or fat Mexican chick with a pocket dimension inside of her backpack.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
It was so bad.
So you're talking about a lot. So the thing about where MiHoYo's market even, like, I mean, people say the game is unrealistic. These people have unrealistic upset things. And I can agree to that. Depending on the game, I don't like the aesthetics. I hate the fan shipping community in the game. I hate the fan shipping community in this game. They're awful, by the way.
Oh, shipping communities in every community.
They are awful.
They are the worst, most degenerate, perverted, disgusting, especially because they involve children half the time.
Actually, that's not even the worst part, but that is a subject matter for another day. But no, in gaming, like Assassin's Creed, they fucked up. Like, that game is still going to sell, but that is Ubisoft's, like, last swan song. Like, even if you look at Randy Pitchford, uh, they there's already signaling that, but I wouldn't say that as much as DEI as that's a Borderlands issue than something else. But that is a matter like Borderlands 4, apparently they're already saying is going to undersell. But Assassin's Creed Shadows is just
Well,
they have
Borderlands,
moved the goalpost on it so much.
but Borderlands is also they're also not expecting much of it because the movie did so horribly because of the bullshit that they put into the movie.
Don't know. They did worse because it wasn't a Borderlands film.
Well, that too, but it was called Borderlands, and it hurts when you do something like that. If you don't do something proper, it will hurt the brand.
That's the worst part. Then but with Assassin's Creed Shadows, though, that is going to be a bigger issue because
No one wants to play the Black Samurai.
I don't know. Mirage, but that's the whole thing, right? No one ever really says like it's a. It goes into game development and touch on the last public. See, Baldur's Gate 3, when people go, well, it was a woke success. That game was woke, wasn't it? It was a success. Okay.
Well, they go to
They developed Baldur's Gate. They developed Baldur's Gate 3. 2/3 of it was already developed.
Well, and here's the thing. They go back and try and say games were woke if they had the tranny option or like most games, you could be you could be sort of a tranny and it was more of a humor thing.
Yeah.
Like Saints Row always sort of had that.
Yes.
Where you could have your underwear, but they consider that woke. It's like, no, back then it was all as a joke thing. It's for people who wanted to do not serious characters.
Yeah.
But because they say that woke doesn't, once you go woke, you go broke. And they're like, no. See, these games were successful. It's like, no, those were not woke.
Well, no, my favorite thing in the gaming industry is when trans people come in. They go, did you know X product was always woke the entire time?
Well, that's just like the Star Wars with the R2-D2 being gay lesbian.
Yes, that made me chuckle. The thing is, right? You could go back to Fallout. Like Baldur's Gate 3, I need to finish my playthrough. I'm on the very last part. I put like 200 hours into that game, and I just chose not to come back. Like 200. I'm 400 hours into that total because I had to redo that save file at one point. And the idea is I'm in towards the very end of the game. When you hit Baldur's Gate, it's the most diverse city known to man.
Or what was that game? It was done by a trans person, or was supposed to. I think I found it. Dead by Daylight.
Oh yeah, no, Dead by Daylight's still popular though.
No, but they did a transgender voice actor, but they never specifically said that they hired them to do a trans character.
Yeah.
And the character came out.
They made the character a monster. Yes.
It's like you're playing a zombie. You're never going to be it. Or anytime that they come out, a black guy says they made that character against me, and it's just like, You're the only one who's being racist toward yourself here. No one assumed it to.
I mean, what? And the problem with like Avowed, like they basically that game was dead on arrival. Baldur's Gate 3 is supposed to get an update with classes that I'm going to try. I mean, I literally took way too long. Like, but it's supposed to get like 8 new classes here this year, pre-update, basically. But like they call that, oh, that was a woke game, and that was successful. Not in its entirety. The horniness was a feature. Not a bug.
No. It's just like what we said, we've talked about a few times over and over again. You can have pro-black, you can have pro anything, but the story, one, to make a whole story about being gay or trans or bringing out when it makes no sense is not. You can have games that aren't woke, that have sort of woke elements that don't change the game necessarily,
Uh-huh.
but they don't see it. They have to have the whole game as.
Well, the problem with Avowed is it leads to bland soullessness. Veilguard was probably cursed for so long that it's literally like the game is cursed. Like that game is beyond cursed. Like it was based on, what was it, Dragon Age Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get Avowed. Avowed doesn't have the problem. It just has a problem. It's cooked. Bloodlines 2 is too controversial by modern Paradox standards. The first game has you make a moral choice to either there's literally a snuff film storyline in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You either have a choice to murder them all, force them to stop, or get them to work for you. But then again, it's based on the world of darkness. Okay? If anyone knows about the world of darkness, it's a dark story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It is a dark world. But for some bizarre reason, they hate fascists, though. But here's the thing. But the DEI era coming to an end, it's partly because money's dried up, but it's also because the cultural, I think, hegemony is also against them, too. They pissed off the normies. What is it, the gay Doctor Who's going on the 2nd season?
And he's already quit.
And he's already left the project.
Not because he doesn't agree with it, because he's tired of the hate, because he stood up and he like, that's all they did with Holly promoters. Like, well, if you don't like it, you're a bigot. It's just the same thing with Acolyte. If you don't like it, you're all the bigots, isms, and you're a horrible person. And that's all he's done. And they have written it and made it so fucking gay and in your face. It's like, no. Like, it's literally, you have to just support this or support your morals and just not watch it. And it's just like, because I was ready to give it a chance when I saw David Tennant, even just for the specials. Like, I don't like the looks of the new Doctor, but if David Tennant's coming back, I'll give it a chance. And then I heard about more details. Like, nope, I'm out completely. And I sold all my Doctor Who stuff.
Its own creator sold out his own property.
Yep.
And it's an issue that Disney still has. Like, They redid How to Train Your Dragon. They no longer have the black girl as the Black Viking. By the way.
Wait, they got rid of her?
Yeah.
Wait, I thought the film was ready to come out with her.
They changed that entire film.
I thought... Whoa.
Yeah, go look at the new trailer for it. How to Train Your Dragon. They abandoned that entirely.
Well, she still is Black Nico Parker.
Like, if you go look up the trailer, they changed the trailer.
They've whitewashed her more?
What?
Because it's
go back
still...
and look at it.
Okay.
They changed it.
3 weeks ago. That should be good enough.
Yeah, go look at the current trailer, the release trailer. Yeah.
Okay. Recently uploaded. New final trailer. Okay, let me... So you don't get copyright.
Yeah, they went back and changed it.
Oh, she's still in there.
But they changed it.
Wait, did they make the movie a little bit more 3D-ish looking? Oh, this is screen culture. I can't trust that.
Yeah, go back and look. That was changed. Oh, yeah. I'm going to keep track of that because I know they changed that in development. Snow White, they're still going to release. Disney, I think, but the marketing is going to be very minimal for it. And even if you look at what happened with Captain Falcon, right? The fourth Captain America, they finally admitted that was a shit show.
She's still there. It's just a little bit more whitewashed.
Yeah, she is.
But it's still the same actress doing the same. But they've... Now, to know if this is legit or how it comes out in the end. Because she's not necessarily a dark black person. She's not...
Well, I'm going to be more curious because I want to say what was the other project supposed to come out too? I want to say it was Percy Jackson's new series.
Oh, that one looked like crap.
What, the main character, the person?
Well, or no, the girl. They changed her to... And this is what we brought up with D-Lord and when we were talking about stuff in general was it's not the problem that they change someone, that they race swap someone. It's the amount they do it and it only goes one direction. You never see a black character really switch to white. And if it is, it's so minor or so rare that most people can't even think about it.
Well, and the whole thing too. Harry Potter series, they got
Whoa! Have you seen the comments about the lynching? About the when what's his name puts Snape in the tree if they hire a black guy to do Snape?
Oh no! I don't know. We don't know what the story is gonna be.
But I'm gonna have to get going in one moment.
Yeah, I know you're good though. I'll close it out on the idea because I'm gonna keep track of the Harry Potter series. Do not think that she is not a leptoid. She herself said she wanted a black Hermione.
Well, yeah, I think in the original book she was supposed to be black.
And then you have the whole thing with that series. So Dumbledore is played by the guy who's the dad in Third Rock.
Oh, yes.
You have Snape, apparently, who's going to be a black rapper. Then you're going to have that's going to be crazy. That's probably going to rival Watchmen as bad.
And that's saying something.
Do you remember the Watchmen series?
I remember I was never even a fan of the original movie.
Then
But
the
when I saw the book come
HBO
out,
one?
I saw and heard how horrible it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's you go. I'll probably continue that because the era is coming to an end, but we're still going to be dealing with projects for like the next
And as you're
year.
seeing in government, even though it's supposed to all be gone, they're still going to be fighting it. They're still going to be pushing it. It's still going to be it's going to be forever till they can get rid of it 100% if it's ever gone. Because in 4 years, it's hard to say what's going to happen in the next election.
Well, you got midterms.
Yes.
If Democrats largely get destroyed in the midterms, right? Let's assume they get wrecked in the midterms. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah. Well, because there's a lot of people who are still actually more for what Trump's doing than it's not. The ones who are against it are more vocal, and you're hearing more about the people who are against it, but the polls are all showing that people are agreeing he got majority of the vote. It wasn't even like a close call. He destroyed.
No, him winning the popular vote fucked up every narrative they could have.
Oh, I know.
Him getting the popular vote, I didn't even think was possible.
Well, because I thought what most people thought was going to happen the same thing in the first term. People weren't going to admit that they wanted to vote for him. It was going to be they say they're going to vote for her, and then they vote in the popular vote for Kamala because they don't want to admit that they're voting for Trump.
Yeah.
But after how the right were treated and people who voted for him were treated, we're unapologetic now.
But yeah, now I'll have to do a follow-up to this because what Sorter will be either tomorrow morning early or Tuesday. He's in Greek time though, so
I never work, so I'm usually available. Hell, I'll probably even be later tonight.
So either way, because it doesn't sound disjointed, because I wanted to go over the origins, because we're still going to be dealing with projects. Like, unless Disney or all these companies want to eat all of their money they've spent, they're still going to have to release it.
No, they can't do that. The only real thing I could see them not doing would be Snow White.
Snow White's coming out over hell and high water.
Because that was just done so horribly, and it should have been out by now and released and bombed and whatnot.
It's not even getting a press tour, as I said last night.
Because they don't want Rachel Zegler or whatever her name is.
Apparently, no, Gal Gadot's Jewish, and apparently she made anti-Jewish statements during the stuff, and Gal Gadot's not happy with her.
Oh yeah, no, Zegler is has kind of pro-Palestinian, and I didn't watch the Oscars, but you always see online, you can't avoid that people show clips, and the way Zegler tried to walk in front of her. But Zegler has ruined Snow White. Well, the first thing that ruined Snow White was Peter Dinklage.
And then they redid it, so it is like basically three. Yeah, no, they're 3D dwarves now.
Yes, because Peter Dinklage said it was insulting, blah, 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 and he's like, most midgets were like, dude, we don't get many roles. Shut the fuck up.
The fun part is, one of the people who actually went against him was the guy who was Hornswoggle.
No, but again, he ruined it. So they did that horrible casting with mostly regular-sized people and kids, and then people are like, what the fuck is this? So they are stuck with, instead of reshooting all the movie again, they just went, okay, we're going to overlay it all with 3D. And people say that.
Oh, God, and that's like the laziest fucking shit ever.
But it also looks, and Disney is horrible with their 3D artists, that they rush them and treat them like shit.
And then you can go back and look at Marvel. on that one.
Well, yeah, because Marvel's downgraded in their 3D effects because of Disney mistreating the people. But Ziegler has, every time that they've gone close to putting it out for release, Ziegler's come out and said something about, oh, Snow White isn't like that old one. It's about woman empowerment. And she keeps saying things against the movie.
Yeah.
And people go, whoa, 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 this doesn't sound good. We don't want to watch it. It's like, fuck, we're going to delay it more because, well, she fucked up.
And that's the whole thing. Because actually, I
she,
just thought that. I mean, it's a little more rushed today, but if you do something later, or we just get to it, or so. Because
well,
I do need to go over. I do need to go over the. I do want to have where I go over that Trump speech, but I need to pull clips from it.
Yeah, do a proper one, not a reaction to someone else reacting.
Because there was a lot said there.
Well, and if you, I looked briefly at her past videos, not watching them, but just seeing how they're titled, and she seems to try and be right-leaning view, but she tries to be more centrist. She tries to go from the. She's either a left person who's waking up to right-wing ideas, or she's just like the news. She's trying to be like Candace Owens, and she goes with whichever side is paying the best.
She's trying to do the Candace Owens thing.
Yeah,
I got that idea,
but because she keeps going back and forth, whichever.
Well, it's as I said. What did I say last night? She feels like she has an identity crisis.
All right. Well, I'm starting to get the dirty glare from the wife.
Yes, you have fun shopping. I'm gonna close out here.
Yeah. I'll be free later if something wants to be done or whatnot.
I will see you then.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
See you soon.
Bye, guys. Bye, Star, if you ever show, or Sparkles if you ever show up.
Yes, and to those of you watching. No, I didn't mind this. I'll have this. I'll probably be a series on this, and I just gotta lay out the other parts. But there's a lot that's happened within the last 6 months, like companies but we're still going to be dealing with it as a culture, so it's going to be interesting, so to speak. But it is Sunday. I do have stuff. I meant to do this the other day. I had more time, but sorter, I think tomorrow earlier or Tuesday. Because I really don't stream Mondays. So I will catch people then. Comments to that and catch up. Because it'll be the first in a series, so I have to go catch up on something else. That's probably going to need my attention as well. Because I may have to talk about that stupid Eric July video. I don't want to. Clusterfuck. Anyways, I will catch people later.